You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to the Dressage Today podcast's Training Buzz. These short podcasts bring you the best tips straight from our subscription video site, Dressage Today On Demand. To get full access to all our videos, go to ondemand.dressagetoday.com and enter promo code DTPodcast to save 15% off your subscription. Now, listen in on this week's buzz and enjoy the ride. Today's episode is sponsored by Purina. The PhD equine nutritionists at Purina Animal Nutrition tackle problems using science, and their love of horses keeps them at it until they get it right. Even with the most established feeds, they keep innovating. Even when it takes years of research, they don't stop until it's right. They are dedicated to the scientific method, but it can't capture the feeling of seeing horses reach their full potential. It takes science and love to help your horses live their best lives. Put their research to the test at horseinnovation.com. In this excerpt from a video, Catherine Haddad Staller explained what the elements of submission are and how to tell if a horse is in submission. She looks at the ears and the facial expression, how he carries his tail, his relaxation, as well as his mouth. She discusses how the frame plays into this as well as obedience, and offers tips on how to improve the submission.
With this horse, we're going to talk about submission and the marks for submission. Now, if you read your test, there's all kinds of words used. I remember these marks in German, Rückentätigkeit and Maultätigkeit. The Germans speak about, does the horse accept the bit nicely in the mouth? Does the back swing? Does it look like the horse is accepting the rider's weight and accepting the seat-to-hand connection? Those are all part of submission. I personally define submission as an agreement to work together. Submission is not about domination. It's not about making the horse do something. I think that if your horse is truly in a state of submission, he will look very happy in what he does. So, and I'm not a dressage judge, okay? But as a person who is judgmental about dressage horses and riding, I'm not a judge, but I'm judgmental. I would look for these things when I'm looking for submission. I think when you're looking for submission, the horse's ears will tell you a lot. That's the first thing, the ears and the facial expression. Is the tail part of submission? Absolutely. Submission has a lot to do with relaxation and harmony. The tail, therefore, has to swing. As a person who judges dressage, riding, and training, I would watch the horse's tail. I want to see it carried slightly away from his rump. I want to see it in motion. It should flirt with me a little bit. I should see a little bit of left-right swing to the tail. I don't want to see the tail cramping. I don't want to see it cramped or held off to one side. And I'd like to see it swinging freely in both directions, left and right. So if you look at the mouth and you look at the tail, you'll already know a lot about submission. Now, when you're getting a dressage test judged, the consistency of the horse's frame is very, very important. If the frame never changes, and by this I don't mean that it's fixed in one position. If the frame is always, if the frame is always properly carried, then, and not by the rider, but by the horse, you should get a good score on submission. Also, if it's clear that the horse does what you ask it to do in the moment that you ask it. And I think submission is, in dressage, easily judgeable in the flying changes, for instance, because you can see when the rider gives the aid, and if the horse gives a submissive, agree to work with you response, your mark for submission in that movement would be very high. Now, how do you improve marks on submission? Because that's what this tutorial is all about. How do you improve the bottom marks? There's only one way to improve submission, and it's the same way you improve the gaits, and that is to sit well and improve your seat-to-hand contact. If you have a bad seat-to-hand contact, you are going to have terrible submission. That's just the bottom line. Seat-to-hand connection is everything in increasing bottom marks, and that means that you have to be able to follow the horse's back in a soft way with your seat. You need to be able to make a good connection from behind. You have to allow his back to swing forward toward the bit so that his tail swings and so that the horse accepts the bit without you pulling on the reins. I can't tell you the number of riders who think that seesawing on the bit to get the head down is how you put a horse on the bridle. That is not true. You sit a horse onto the bridle with a very light hand. Your job as the rider is to get the bits out of the horse's way so that you can sit him into self-carriage and into a very good balance point. So if you cannot sit the trot, then you better be working on your seat, because you're not going to raise your bottom marks if you don't work on your seat-to-hand connection.
We hope you enjoyed this bonus podcast. What would you like to learn about, and what tips would you like to hear? Email me, Stephanie, at sruff@equinenetwork.com, or reach out to us on social media. Remember, go to ondemand.dressagetoday.com and enter promo code DTPodcast to save 15% off your subscription to our online catalog. Thanks for listening.